I'm sure you've heard the news, and welcome to the Benjamin Fulford Intelligence Update for March 4th, 2025, brought to you by the... Tonight, we bring you an in-depth report on the collapse of the Khazarian Mafia, the Trump-Zelensky meeting, and the seismic shifts in global power structures. Stay tuned as we uncover the truth behind the headlines. The Trump-Zelensky meeting was the fall of the Berlin Wall for the Khazarian Mafia. The world is witnessing a regime change bigger than the fall of the Soviet Union. This is the collapse of Khazarian Mafia rule in the West. The consequences will be felt for thousands of years into the future. This is what the public humiliation of Ukrainian dictator Vladimir Zelensky by U.S. President Donald Trump signifies. First of all, to understand we are dealing with the end of an entity that goes back at least 1,000 years, look at the images below. Vasivofod Yuri Mstislav Rostisey Andrei Vsevolod. They show the Ukrainian government uses the same symbol as the Khazarian Empire did over 1,000 years ago. The elite of this Satan-worshipping empire have been plotting revenge against Russia ever since Christian czars destroyed their empire over 1,000 years ago. It goes even deeper than that. We are witnessing the end of a 3,000-year-old plot to enslave all of humanity. The KM have been defeated by an Anglo-Saxon, Russian, and Jewish alliance. The news events you see over the coming days and weeks need to be looked at in this context. What we were shown last week was a farce in which Zelensky, Trump, and Vice President J.D. Vance argued in front of a gathering of the world's media. Ostensibly, Zelensky was there to sign an agreement offering $500 billion worth of Ukrainian rare earth metals to the United States. What happened, though, is that he asked for the U.S. military to fight against Russia in exchange for the minerals. Trump and Vance said no, and Zelensky was unceremoniously booted out of the meeting. The videos below show some of the highlights of this farce.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
That.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having
I'm not
cards.
playing cards.
But right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You're
gambling with World War III.
What are you
You're
thinking
gambling
about?
with
What are you
World
thinking
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. It's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A lot of times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on out here. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. You're People are dying. You're
again,
running low on soldiers. Listen,
please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Even today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I answer?
No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks in this cabinet, and not only in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Again, just say thank you.
I said a lot of times to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. Then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I want this. Look. If you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire?
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me. That wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden who was not a smart person. That was your president.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any guards.
One more question.
It was a farce because, first of all, Ukraine does not have $500 billion worth of minerals. Russian FSB sources say there is about $20 billion worth of minerals in Ukraine that are on Russian-controlled territory. Furthermore, Zelensky cannot give Trump the mining concessions because he already gave them to the UK. On January 16, just 4 days before Trump's inauguration, London and Kiev signed a 100-year partnership treaty. It stipulates the UK will take control of all ports, power plants, natural gas concessions, storage facilities, pipelines, and titanium deposits in Ukraine. Three high-level sources, including one from the U.S. Space Force, say now there will be a financial collapse in America this year, along with civil unrest and war. Trump was clinging to the idea of $500 billion worth of minerals because he was hoping to use that money to avert bankruptcy. His talk about replacing the Internal Revenue Service with an External Revenue Service is another case in point. The Trump people are stuck in the original Constitution from 250 years ago, when tariffs were the main source of government income. This is not 250 years ago. The U.S. government gets $5.1 trillion a year from taxes. U.S. total imports are $3 trillion a year. That means the U.S. would have to impose 150% tariffs to get the same amount of money. That is impossible because people are not going to pay 150% more for their imports. The talk of imposing 25% tariffs on Canada is also impossible. U.S. farmers get 80% of their potash from Canada. Putting a tariff on that will raise costs for U.S. farmers and make them uncompetitive. Then there is aluminum and steel. U.S. industry depends on cheap Canadian steel and aluminum made in giant factories that use cheap Canadian hydropower. You cannot just delete or move these giant industrial facilities with the stroke of a pen. Without this cheap metal, U.S. industry becomes uncompetitive. Clearly, the elephant in the room remains the Federal Reserve Board. It needs to be nationalized along with all the other central banks if the United States is to avoid bankruptcy. That is what the real war is about. This will involve bankrupting the U.S. corporation and replacing it with something new. Here is commentary from a Pentagon source about the situation. So, the time has now arrived for the U.S. to show the world their gold hand. Will Trump suppress the news if it is bad? Very likely. Whether the gold is or is not in Fort Knox, it could be seen as a sideshow. After all, it accounts for only 2% of all the gold ever mined in history. But on the other hand, either little or no gold there results in no confidence in the U.S. or in the dollar. At $2,920, all the gold officially held by central banks is $3 trillion. Just one U.S. stock, Microsoft, has a market cap of $3 trillion. How can the value of a single American company equal the total central bank gold holdings? It tells us how overvalued stocks are, and that the gold price is ridiculously low. Gold is just starting another massive up move. This is the acceleration or exponential phase, as explained below. Now Trump says the U.S. will move forward on a crypto strategic reserve that includes XRP, SOL, ADA, Bitcoin, ETH, and other cryptos. This is all fine and dandy, but he will have to back them with a basket of real-world goods, or he will just be whistling in the wind. In another sign of the financial bizarro world, a Citigroup attempt to credit a client's account with just $280 went wildly wrong, crediting it with $81 trillion instead, the Financial Times reports. The colossal error undermines the company's drive to convince regulators that it has rectified operational shortcomings that have plagued it for years. This was probably not a mistake. It was some kind of high-level money laundering operation. All they needed was for the money to appear in an account for a few seconds to cook some fake books with. Facing bankruptcy, Trump has allied himself with Russia against the owners of the FRB, the EU, and their frontman Zelensky. In what amounts to a declaration of war, Trump said, "The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That is the purpose of it."
But I love the countries of Europe. I love all countries, frankly, all different. But European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
What will happen if these countries or the EU retaliate?
They can't. I mean, they can try.
To show support for Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says, "We'd be open to working with the U.S. on rare earth mineral resources. We have far more than Ukraine. We have deposits all over the region. Developing them needs capital investments. We'd welcome private companies."
Мы, кстати говоря, готовы были бы предложить и американским нашим партнерам, когда я партнеры, говорю, имею в виду только административные, правительственные структуры, ну и компании, если бы они проявили интерес к совместной работе. У нас, безусловно, на порядок, я хочу это подчеркнуть, на порядок больше ресурсов подобного рода, чем в Украине. Россия является одним из безусловных лидеров по запасам этих редких и редкоземельных металлов. Они у нас имеются и на севере, в Мурманске, на Кавказе, в Кабардино-Балкарии, на Дальнем Востоке, в Иркутской области, в Якутии, в Тыве. Это достаточно капиталоемкие инвестиции, проекты капиталоемкие. Мы с удовольствием работали бы совместно с любыми иностранными партнерами, в том числе с американскими. Да, кстати говоря, что касается новых территорий, то же самое. Мы готовы привлечь иностранных партнеров и так называемые новые наши исторические территории, которые вернули в состав Российской Федерации. Там тоже есть запасы определенные. Мы готовы с нашими партнерами, в том числе с американскими, работать там.
More evidence of a U.S.-Russian alliance came with the news the U.S. plans to act as an intermediary and transport Russian gas through the Nord Stream 2 pipelines to Germany. Secret talks have been taking place in Switzerland to discuss a deal for several weeks already. This Putin-Trump bromance prompted the Europeans to call a meeting at the Rothschild-owned Lancaster House, a 200-year-old elegant mansion near Buckingham Palace. The meeting included leaders from France, Germany, Denmark, Italy, Netherlands, Norway, Poland, Spain, Turkey, Finland, Sweden, Czechia, and Romania, as well as the NATO Secretary-General and the presidents of the European Commission and European Council. Even the gap-toothed Justin Trudeau avatar was there. Here you can watch Zelensky arrive at 10 Downing Street in London after being kicked out of the White House. He ignores questions about getting Trump back on the side. He then went to the meeting at the Rothschild property.
Can anything be salvaged, President Zelensky?
President Zelensky, can you get Trump back on side?
Can this be salvaged, President Zelensky?
Can you get Trump back on side?
Is it too late for your relationship with President Trump?
President Zelensky, can you get Trump back on side?
Is it too late, President Zelensky?
President Zelensky, how do you repair your relationship with President Trump, please?
Still negotiate with President Trump, Mr. Zelensky.
Can you be without the US, President Zelensky?
What's your message to Donald Trump, President Zelensky? Can you help broker a deal?
Can this be repaired, President Zelensky?
President Zelensky?
After the meeting, EU globalists Ursula von der Leyen, President of the EU Commission, Valdis Dombrovskis, EU Commission, Roberta Metsola, President of EU Parliament, Antonio Costa, President of the European Council, and Manfred Weber, President of the European People's Party, all sent out this same message. Your dignity honors the bravery of the Ukrainian people. Be strong, be brave, be fearless. You are never alone, dear President. We will continue working with you for a just and lasting peace. This meeting was followed by a blizzard of propaganda. For example, the Khazarian mafia published this picture of a fake bloated King Charles with a fake Zelensky. Then blackmailed pedophile UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he wants to put UK boots on the ground and planes in the air to defend a peace deal in Ukraine.
First, we will keep the military aid flowing and keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia to strengthen Ukraine now. Second, we agreed that any lasting peace must ensure Ukraine's sovereignty and security, and Ukraine must be at the table. Third, in the event of a peace deal, we will keep boosting Ukraine's own defensive capabilities to deter any future invasion. Fourth, we will go further to develop a coalition of the willing to defend a deal in Ukraine and to guarantee the peace. Not every nation will feel able to contribute, but that can't mean that we sit back. Instead, those willing will intensify planning now with real urgency. The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing. We're working with the US on this point after my meeting with President Trump last week. And let me be clear, we agree with the President on the urgent need for a durable peace. Now, we need to deliver together. Finally, we agreed that leaders will meet again very soon to keep the pace behind these actions and to keep working towards this shared plan. We are at a crossroads in history today. This is not a moment for more talk. It's time to act. Time to step up and lead, and to unite around a new plan for a just and enduring peace. Thank you.
The reality, though, is the British Army only has 25 main battle tanks working at best, and troops are not set up for a deployment to Ukraine, according to The Independent. That is why EU witch Ursula von der Leyen said we have to urgently rearm at the London Ukraine summit. The problem is that with the new Russian-US alliance, Russia can occupy all of Western Europe within a few weeks without worrying about US retaliation. What is going to happen is the Europeans will have to surrender to Russia and ask for their protection from China. Here, you can watch a brainwashed EU bureaucrat, Kaja Kallas, slowly approach the conclusion only Russia can protect them from China.
China.
Well, we have, of course, the de-risking policy. So really not to make the same mistakes that we have done with Russia. But now seeing America really bonding with Russia, then that, of course, raises a lot of questions regarding China as well. And of course, China is very friendly with us now. I mean, we need to have the discussions on our China policy. So far, it has been so that de-risking, really not to put all the eggs in one basket, in de-risking in the areas where the risks are higher, cooperating in other areas with China. So. And of course, here what America does plays a big role. And by the way, one of the questions nobody is able to answer here about China. If, I hear the statements by some American officials saying that, you can't possibly beat Russia. I mean, Russia is so much bigger and, you need to give in to Russia because it's not beatable, which is not true, by the way. But then you're trying to signal to your Asian counterparts that if China is attacking them, then you are there. But China is so much bigger economy than Russia is, with so much bigger military than Russia is. So if you're saying that you're not able to beat, that we collectively are not able to really pressure Russia so much that it would have an effect, because then how do you say that you're able to take on China risk? If somebody is able to answer me this question, I would be very happy.
We're actually going to delete it from the recording because we don't want the Chinese to hear that answer that you just gave.
Okay, sorry.
No, I'm just joking. Let me ask you about again, in the sense, and I'll ask this as a last question, and then if we could go.
But my point is, I just want.
Well, I think we all got the point.
If we don't get Russia right, we don't get China right either.
Yep.
That's my point.
The Russians will be happy to do this as soon as the war crimes trials for the Nazi mass murderers have been conducted. Here you can see group photos of the pedophiles and murderers the Russians want to bring to justice. The situation has also led to a flurry of back-channel communications between the CIA, the FSB, MI6, and Asian secret societies. These groups have a long-standing agreement that no matter what, they will not be fooled into starting all-out thermonuclear war. A senior Japanese military commander recently confirmed to this writer what U.S. Space Force and other sources say, and that is that nuclear war has already destroyed civilization on this planet at least twice. This time, to avert all-out war, a plan has been agreed to by various Western and Eastern secret societies that calls for replacing the current UN-centered international architecture with a global village of 7 groups who would deal with situations that affect us all. In a sign, the U.S. military white hats behind Trump go along with this plan. De facto U.S. military spokesman Elon Musk backed calls for the U.S. to withdraw from NATO and the United Nations after months of bad-mouthing the two international organizations. The UN is closely linked to the Rockefeller family. Family patriarch John D. Rockefeller had the following creed about non-Khazarian mafia humans: "We will shorten their lives and weaken their minds, pretending to do the opposite. We will use our scientific and technological knowledge in subtle ways so that they will never see what is happening. We will use soft metals, aging accelerators and sedatives in food and water as well as in the air. They will be covered in poisons wherever they turn. Soft metals will make them lose their minds. The Rockefellers managed to avoid war crimes trials for supporting the Nazis by donating the plot of land the UN headquarters are built on. Most of the UN's activities are funded by Khazarian mafia honchos like the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers are also the people behind cancer. As Polish intelligence informs us, the cancer epidemic is an undeniable fact and the long-term effectiveness of its treatment with Rockefeller methods is below 3%. That is, killing people with chemotherapy is over 97% effective. Over 95% of all cancers are mitochondrial metabolic diseases and have nothing to do with genes but with environmental factors such as chemicalization of food. This same satanic Khazarian mafia group was trying to use their privately funded WHO to turn the planet into a giant human factory farm using their pandemic treaty. This is now blowing up in their faces. A representative of the Polish nonprofit Citizen Go organization says, "I just got back from Geneva, straight from the UN headquarters, and I can tell you one thing, WHO is in serious trouble. Panic, chaos, desperation. You can see that they are losing ground. They are doing everything to save the situation because we are the ones who are dealing them a heavy blow. The WU is cracking under pressure. I saw it with my own eyes. Delegations are getting nervous and more countries are starting to hesitate." Bill Gates, the person supplying over 80% of the WHO's funds, applied for Beast System Patent 060606 in June 2019. Then he released COVID-19 via EcoHealth on September 11, 2019. Then he published Patent 060606 in March 2020. This mark of the Beast patent is to track all vaccinated people worldwide connected to the Internet of Things via a quantum link of pulsed microwave frequencies at 2.4 gigahertz or higher from cell towers and satellites directly to the graphene oxide stored in the fatty tissues according to Polish intelligence sources. It wasn't just to track us, it was also to kill us. Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates injected the world with HIV and cancer and SV40 monkey virus that showed up in 1951 to 1955, now shows up in the COVID vaccine 75 years later.
That's something, there's some data point that everybody's missing. You know that every single vaccine maker, except one, Pfizer, was ready to deploy the COVID jab. Operation Warp Speed comes out, Trump gets told about it. Who wasn't ready? Pfizer. So what does Pfizer decide to do? They go downstairs 3 floors to their genetic department and they find SV40. They use SV40 to design their jab because they're late to the game. And what do they then do? They tell their scientists to use a molecular tool to take the evidence of SV40 out, and then they present a clean version to the FDA and they get approved. Now,
and SV40 is the thing that causes that crazy epithelioma turbo cancers?
No, well, SV40 is what we got in the Qatar event during FDR's term in polio.
The guy that injected his grandchildren.
That's Osher. That's later. But this is the story that goes from FDR all the way up to this point of time. So I want you to think critically now from first principles. Tell me how a monkey virus that shows up in 1951 through 1959 now shows up in COVID vaccines that are supposed to be new and improved 75 years later. And Pfizer tries to take it out so you don't see it. That's why there's 2 legal definitions for BioNTech and for the Pfizer jab.
I don't know how you extract malice from that. I mean,
it's pure malice.
What's the official story? I don't know. What is it?
The official story is they wanted to kill people.
Well, that's not what they're saying in mainstream media, right? So
you don't have to worry about the saying part. That's the cool.
I'm just curious. Like, what? I hear what you're saying.
But the story breaks.
Yeah.
So in 2021, I'm in Clubhouse, a Bitcoin room.
Yeah.
And I tell everybody, I said, look, I just did a documentary with Robert Malone, who's an inventor, co-inventor of the mRNA technology, and Robert McCullough, who's been famous for all the stuff he's done.
They've both been on here, yeah.
And guess what I do? I don't talk about the science at all. I talk about one thing. You can go back and watch this. There's 2 patents for Pfizer. I said, there's something nefarious going on here. And I don't tell anybody why I'm making this a big deal in this documentary. Because you heard all the things that I learned in my life in the Danny Jones podcast about SV40 and all that. I had a sneaking suspicion in 2020 that because there was two legal definitions, that SV40 was going to be used in somebody's jab. And the most likely candidate was Pfizer.
Yeah.
So what did I tell everybody in Bitcoin Clubhouse? Don't take the jab, and especially don't take the Pfizer jab.
We also have plenty of evidence the corporate propaganda media uses fear-mongering lies to try to fool people into taking these toxic vaccines. In the latest example, ABC News uses a Mumbai image from 2022 to push the measles outbreak in Texas in 2025. Nothing spells out hoax like faked photos on mainstream news. U.S. Space Force sources tell us the uber James Bond villain Gates has recently gone missing. It is not clear yet if the MI6-007 hit ordered on him was successful, or if he is hiding in a deep hole somewhere. A lot of other villains are definitely getting rounded up. Satellite imagery of the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base shows roughly 175 new structures, mainly temporary buildings and canvas tents, constructed between February 2nd and February 19th. The question is, will these new facilities house pedophile Satanists or illegal immigrants? There is a big question mark hanging over whether we are finally going to see a real crackdown on the child killers. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi received fierce backlash on both sides of the political aisle over the chaotic release of federal files on the late billionaire pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, which has been described as a debacle and an absolute clown show. The incident had Republicans and Democrats alike up in arms, after the files failed to yield major new findings and featured some information that was already public. Copies of the Epstein files were given to a number of hand-selected influencers before being published on the Department of Justice website several hours later. It was not a good day for the administration, Florida Democrat Jared Moskowitz said, speaking on CNN. If you look at the traffic online over the Epstein release, I have never seen the left and the right come together in a moment on the debacle of the files release. In another bad sign, actor Gene Hackman has died alongside his wife, pianist Betsy Arakawa, and their dog at home. Gene Hackman's death is under suspicious investigation after authorities found the home's door left open and unsecured, with pills scattered beside his wife. Pentagon sources say Gene Hackman was supposed to be the first witness for the DOJ FBI on Hollywood pedophilia. Ian Carroll says it correctly. Dan Bongino, the new deputy director of the FBI, doesn't dare call out Israel as the nation that was behind Epstein's blackmailing operation. The evidence is overwhelming that he is a Mossad asset.
Bongino just perfectly elucidated why we are so obsessed with Israel right now. And despite his and this whole administration's endless Zionist rhetoric, this is why, if you are pro-Israel, you are not currently America first. And until we deal with this problem, we are not a free nation.
About a year and a half after that, I'm in a green room at Fox, and I'm not going to say who because they didn't give me permission to share. It says, you know, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that. That he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset. Meaning,
this part.
His plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there that these videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense. Which Middle Eastern countries they are, I don't know. But
you don't know? You don't know which Middle Eastern nations? So there's this entire trafficking ring made exclusively of Jewish billionaires, from the front man to the mastermind to the handler to the bank to the literal ex-prime minister of Israel, also the ex-head of Israeli intelligence. I'm sure that all these Jewish billionaires set up a trafficking ring on behalf of Iran, right? So it's an open secret at Fox News, in these political circles, that Epstein was an intelligence asset of some nation in the Middle East. I don't know if you haven't been paying attention, but the Jews don't get along too well with these Arab nations. What nation could they possibly work for? But the most critical part is that the blackmail was not exclusively in Epstein's possession, because that's not how that works. He was doing blackmail on behalf of a foreign intelligence service, targeting all of the United States' top people, all of our top scientists, politicians, wealthy people, as well as British, just anyone he could get his hands on. And all of that blackmail is possessed by whatever country he was working for to this day. And they won't give it to us. So even if they blow this story up, expose all the files, even if they show the tapes, which they won't and should not do, we still wouldn't be the only people in possession of them. Every single person on those tapes is controlled by some foreign country in the Middle East. It's like, what foreign country in the Middle East has an insane amount of influence over everyone in the United States for no explicable reason? We are told ad nauseum that claiming that Jewish people have allegiance to Israel over America is an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, despite the fact that on TV every day we have explicit evidence coming directly out of their mouths that that is often, not always, the case. And it's not always the case, and that's okay. But sometimes, frequently, at the top of power, it is the case. Such as Jonathan Pollard, one of the most egregious intelligence leaks in American history. He was an American Jew that, because of his Jewish heritage, had a stronger allegiance to Israel than America and committed high treason by giving Israel all of our secrets. This probably has a lot to do with Bill Clinton getting blackmailed by Epstein with the Monica Lewinsky scandal. That was all very tied together. Jeffrey Epstein himself is a perfect example. He's American. He was born in New York. His allegiance was clearly not to America first. Robert Maxwell, one of the most famous Mossad spies in the world, was born in Czechoslovakia. He was a British citizen, but his resting place is on the Mount of Olives in Israel, because he backstabbed just about every government he ever worked for or had citizenship with on behalf of them. Leslie Wexner, born in Ohio, American billionaire. Clearly his primary allegiance is to Israel if you do even an iota of research about him. This bro was running trafficking rings out of all of Victoria's Secret, as well as Abercrombie & Fitch and Hollister. And I just had to giggle because I accidentally noticed that Ehud Barak, ex-Prime Minister of Israel, head of military intelligence, key member of putting this trafficking ring together and managing it. Yeah, he wasn't born in America, but he was born in Palestine, ironically enough. And a massive, massive portion of American citizens today have this question, both on Trump's side and on the left, and everyone in the middle is noticing very rightly that Trump and Tulsi and Kash and Pam Bondi, RFK, Marco Rubio, this entire administration, this entire cabinet, they've got great takes on America, in my opinion. Great takes on the FBI, great takes on the CIA, great takes on the deep state, great takes on taking down the corporate banker pharma control of our country. But every single one of them is a Zionist and extremely pro-Israel and pretends like Israel is our greatest ally, despite the clear evidence against that. Sure, maybe some Israelis are on our side. I'm sure there's lots of Israelis that are on our side, that are good people, maybe. There's certainly a lot of Jewish people around the world that are great people. But all of these people are very vocal about cutting funding to Ukraine. That's great. But then they try to deflect and stay silent and just do a little dance every time we notice that we're spending more money on Israel than on Ukraine over the years. None of them are talking about cutting funding to Israel that is actively blackmailing the entire US government, has a secret nuclear program, is committing a genocide. At the very least, it's an apartheid state. Their national economy is deeply intertwined in the diamond industry and all sorts of illegal international trade and human rights abuses around that in Africa. We have anti-Semitic speech laws in America when we can criticize our own government and our own president, but we can't criticize Israel. We can't even talk about it, or else we'll get kicked off the internet, kicked out of the government. And I hold out at least a sliver of hope for most of these guys that they do understand what's going on and they understand the gravity of Israel's control and that they are just tiptoeing and playing it careful and trying to get the job done here without starting a firestorm that's going to prevent them from doing that. But it's not looking super great. And just like Forget about all the other conspiracy theories about Israel. Forget about the Rothschilds. Forget about the Federal Reserve. Forget about the fact they own the media. Forget about the fact that they founded Hollywood. Forget about all that. Whether you think it's true or not, it does not matter. Just Epstein alone, just Epstein, blows this whole thing wide open. And even if every other Jewish conspiracy theory was not true, and a lot of them are not true, some of them are maybe, Epstein alone would be cause to sever all diplomatic ties with Israel until this story is completely exposed, because our government is not our own if our presidents and our senators and our top officials and our intel agencies and our billionaires and our media are being blackmailed with that kind of information and material by Israel. And Elon did this thing where he returned an awful lot of free speech to the American people. And there's this really rough consequence of free speech that it makes it really obvious when you're not allowed to talk about one specific topic. And the way that all the Zionists are going to freak out and call me names because of this video pointing out very clear facts that everyone can see for themselves online, that only proves my point. Yeah, Muslim extremists, they suck. Yeah, Sharia law, super whack. I want nothing to do with it. It's an extremely complicated situation. We get it. But just because a conversation is filled with blackmail and psyops and COINTELPRO and misinformation and just trash does not mean we can avoid the conversation about the entire US government being blackmailed with kiddie videos. So Bongino, look at the map. Who do you think he was working for?
Then there is this, asking for a friend. How long can the JFK files, MLK files, and Epstein files sit on Pam Bondi's desk? Did we get played again? The answer seems to be it's a small club that controls them all. Now an FBI whistleblower confirms FBI employees were destroying evidence related to Jeffrey Epstein's files and the JFK assassination. Mike Adams, the Health Ranger XD. Hey everybody, at Rapluna is gonna release everything. Just as soon as the Dog and Pony show is complete, and they've scrubbed all ties to Mossad, and Israel are removed from everything, and all the important people who have ties to Epstein Island are scrubbed, and as soon as all the cover stories are complete, and as soon as the Internet Archive is scrubbed and all social media is scrubbed, and then you will get the truth. The days when Israel can suppress the truth are ending quickly because Israel itself is basically finished. Mossad sources say the ceasefire in Gaza and exchange of hostages is really a total Israeli military defeat. When they talk about new offensives by the IDF, the meaning is clear. Israel is about to collapse. They have nothing left. It's all bluff, the sources say. Israel is now admitting the October 7th attack was a false flag aimed at justifying genocide. No matter what, more such truth is coming out. In the most recent case, children's clothing and books were discovered in tunnels underneath an abandoned KFC near Yuma.
Tunnel 590 feet long and 22 feet below ground inside this abandoned Kentucky Fried Chicken. It began with a traffic stop of Yuma resident and owner of that KFC, Ivan Lopez.
Tonight, exclusive video from inside the tunnel where children's clothes and toys were found 5 feet underground. A room that needed to be dug inside by children with shelves for candles and lamps, bedding, and kids' books.
Also, a Russian task force has just rescued thousands of children trafficked by Marina Abramovich, according to Russian FSB and other sources. Russian special forces rescued thousands of enslaved children from a factory farm in the Ukrainian Carpathian Mountains, as President Putin's campaign against the global adrenochrome industry intensifies. According to Russian sources involved in the raid, the bus that liberated hundreds of children was made possible by the infiltration of an adrenochrome party organized by Marina Abramovich and attended by elites in Paris, France. Ukraine is the global capital of the child sex trade, and investigators warn it is home to a network of adrenochrome factories. Vladimir Zelensky and his backers will go down as some of the worst war criminals in history. Zelensky and the so-called Russian Wagner mercenary group rounded up Ukrainian men and sent them to designated zones to be killed with artillery fire. The women and children were then rounded up and sold as sex slaves or involuntary organ donors, or tortured for adrenochrome. The population of Ukraine was 53 million people in 1993. Now some estimates say it is as low as 18 million. A significant part of the population fled to the EU or Russia. However, about 1.5 million military-aged Ukrainian men were killed. Now, most of Ukraine's best land is controlled by the likes of Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. The Russians are demanding compensation for the trouble caused to them by this Khazarian Mafia Ukraine genocide. Russian President Vladimir Putin and senior Russian officials continue to reject U.S. negotiating terms and demand that Ukraine surrender territory that Russia does not occupy. They say Novorossiya is an integral part of Russia. Putin and other Russian officials defined Novorossiya as all of eastern and southern Ukraine, including Kharkiv. This is in line with the agreement reached between the Five Eyes and the Russians. Under this agreement, Odessa will return to Russia but be a free port like Hong Kong, to allow Ukraine unimpeded trade access with the world. Similar agreements are being implemented around the world. For example, in a sign they are preparing for an East-West future planning agency, the Chinese regime announced plans for a nearly 700,000 square foot embassy at the Royal Mint Court, a historic site near the Tower of London, in 2018. The plans received a boost in January after the British Foreign and Interior Ministers indicated they would support the construction proposal. If completed, the new Chinese embassy would be 10 times the size of China's current embassy at London's Portland Place, and almost twice that of the Chinese embassy in Washington. Of course, the Asians have some house cleaning of their own to finish before a planning agency can be started. Japanese journalist Yukio Ishihara just returned from a mission to report on the horror of the specialized fraud bases in eastern Myanmar. Tens of thousands of foreigners are being held captive and forced to commit fraud at these bases. The Border Guard Force, an ethnic armed group that effectively controls the region, has rescued more than 7,000 foreigners from about 30 countries in searches of these bases. One fraud base, KK Park, is run by a Chinese crime organization and holds more than 10,000 people who were taken to Myanmar via Thailand. The total damage from specialized fraud, ransom demands, and other losses in Southeast Asia is said to be more than $45 billion US. If you ever get a random email from a beautiful Chinese woman offering you some sort of deal, it is probably some poor Chinese guy being held prisoner in Myanmar. Ishihara says there is also a lot of organ trafficking and kidnapping for ransom. If a victim is not good at fraud and his family cannot ransom him, his organs are trafficked. We are also getting reports of bioweapons factories being set up in the region. So basically, China has a Ukraine-style crime zone on its borders that it needs to clean up. We are also getting new reports of directed energy weapons attacks in Asia. These photos showing buildings destroyed and plants intact are from a recent attack on Japan. Also, a dam in Indonesia was just taken out, as this news report indicates. A shallow 6.1 magnitude earthquake hit near the Indonesian island of Sulawesi on Wednesday, the United States Geological Survey said, with no damage or casualties immediately reported. I know the area well. The northern part of the island is known as a child women trafficking center. The name of the main city is Manado. Very beautiful girls there, tall with fair skin, a Pentagon source says. To summarize, the planet Earth has been suffering from a satanic infection, and we are on the verge of being cured. This concludes our intelligence update for March 4th, 2025. Thanks for tuning in to the Qualified Observers. We truly appreciate you choosing us for your intelligence updates. I know we have been MIA for a long time, and for that we are truly sorry, and would like to apologize to all of you patriots who watched our videos every week. We are coming back with all new intelligence updates and briefings from all new sources, so please enjoy. If you like the content you have watched here, please consider smashing that like and subscribe button, plus sharing this video with all your friends.